at around 10:30 p.m. On the 17th of April 2025, Australia's emergency hotline 000 received a distress call reporting a violent home invasion and abduction at a residence on Greenacre Road, Bankstown. The caller was a 15-year-old boy. In a state of panic, he told operators that his mother had just been attacked and taken away by a group of armed men. Neighbors also reported hearing loud screams coming from the house moments earlier. When police arrived, they found the 15-year-old in shock and his 8-year-old sibling unconscious with a head injury. The house showed clear signs of forced entry. Paramedics immediately transported both children to the hospital. The 8-year-old had suffered a serious head trauma and required emergency surgery, reportedly the result of being struck with a baseball bat. Meanwhile, their 5-year-old mother was still missing. Just over an hour later, around 11:30 p.m., a resident in Beverly Hills, about 8 kilometers from Bankstown, reported a suspicious car fire at the end of Welfare Avenue near a park and a major roadway. Firefighters arrived and extinguished the intense blaze, consuming a black SUV. When the fire was finally under control, they discovered human remains in the back seat. Several firefighters later admitted the scene stayed with them for a long time. Police immediately sealed off the area. Although visual identification was impossible, investigators strongly suspected that the remains belonged to the woman abducted in Bankstown just an hour earlier. Standing before a burnt vehicle and unidentified remains, detectives realized they were now dealing with a particularly serious case, one that appeared meticulously planned and chillingly deliberate. That night, police immediately began their preliminary investigation. At the Bankstown residence, they found a chaotic and disturbing scene. The front door had been forced open, with shattered glass scattered across the floor. The living room showed signs of violence. Dark stains later confirmed to be from the 8-year-old boy's head injury were visible, and evidence of a struggle appeared throughout the home. Overturned chairs and scattered belongings indicated that the victim had been taken away brutally. Investigators were shaken as they surveyed the scene. They could only imagine the terror the children experienced as they witnessed their mother being overpowered and taken away. The level of cruelty far exceeded what officers typically encountered. From the 15-year-old statement, police learned that 4 or 5 intruders, dressed in black, wearing masks, and armed with handguns and batons, had stormed into their home. The group assaulted the younger boy with a baseball bat, threatened the older boy at gunpoint, and then attacked their mother. After incapacitating the 4 or 5-year-old woman, the offenders forcibly removed parts of her clothing, an act that left the 15-year-old frozen in shock. They then dragged the woman outside and pushed her into the back seat of a dark SUV waiting at the curb before speeding away into the night. These details alarmed Bankstown detectives as they revealed a high degree of planning and an extreme willingness to harm both a woman and her children. Meanwhile, at the scene of the burned vehicle in Beverly Hills, forensic teams faced immense challenges. The SUV had been almost completely destroyed by fire, its frame twisted by the extreme heat. The remains inside were severely damaged, preventing visual identification. Forensic technicians had to work meticulously to collect any usable evidence. They also found partially burned pieces of clothing on the ground nearby, believed to belong to the victim prior to the fire. A preliminary assessment suggested the victim may have been harmed by a firearm before the vehicle was set alight. Police noted that the blaze occurred in a secluded dead-end street near a park and only a few scattered homes. A local resident said their neighborhood had always been quiet, and they were horrified by the scene. This indicated that the perpetrator had deliberately chosen an isolated area to conceal the crime and destroy evidence. The early findings from both scenes led investigators to a preliminary conclusion. This was a calculated, targeted attack, not a random burglary or spontaneous violence. The victim had been taken from her own home, a place where she should have been safest. The fact that the victim was stripped of clothing and the vehicle set on fire suggested an intent to degrade her and eliminate all evidence. Investigators understood they were dealing with offenders who were ruthless, highly organized, and extremely dangerous. That same night, a task force named Strike Force Bushfield was established, bringing together top detectives from the New South Wales Homicide Squad and local police. Their highest priority was to uncover the mastermind behind this shocking crime. And although investigators strongly suspected the remains belonged to the woman abducted from Bankstown, they proceeded carefully, gathering scientific evidence to confirm her identity. If confirmed, the victim in both incidents would indeed be Kim Thi Tran, 45, mother of the two boys aged 8 and 15. DNA samples were quickly taken from the two children and fingerprints from personal items in the home to compare with evidence recovered from the remains. However, due to the severe damage, extracting DNA was extremely challenging. Police authorized a full forensic autopsy to determine the cause of death and assist with accurate identification. While awaiting the final forensic results, investigators shifted their focus to gathering background information about the missing woman. Through neighbors and friends, they learned that this Vietnamese woman lived quietly, was kind-hearted, and had never been involved in conflicts with anyone. However, one detail stood out. Her husband, Thi Tran, 45, was currently away. According to relatives, he had flown to Queensland for work and was not in Sydney at the time of the incident. Police immediately contacted him. Upon hearing the news, he rushed aboard the earliest flight back to Sydney to identify his wife and take care of the children. As the investigation deepened, officers encountered another challenge. Kim Thi Tran had almost no extended family in Australia. She had immigrated more than 10 years earlier, so aside from her husband and children, she had no close relatives in the country. This made it extremely difficult for police to notify next of kin and gather information about her relationships and personal history. At the same time, a crucial lead emerged from a neighbor's security camera. The footage captured the moment a group of abductors forced a woman into a vehicle. Although the images were blurry and the faces were unclear, it confirmed the one 5-year-old boy's account. A white sedan and a dark SUV had appeared in front of the, quote, home at the time of the incident. This gave police grounds to review traffic cameras along the roughly 8-kilometer route from Bankstown to Beverly Hills in search of the vehicle's trail. A vast network of public and private security cameras was examined. Grainy, late-night images of two vehicles speeding along major roads were pieced together, guiding investigators along their route. Police also appealed to the public for any information about suspicious activity on the night of April 17th. Several residents responded. One reported hearing a car engine rev loudly near the victim's home around 10:30 p.m. Another saw smoke rising in Beverly Hills at approximately 11:30 p.m. Though none had seen the offenders' faces, their reports helped strengthen the sequence of events. Putting all clues together, investigators formed a preliminary timeline. The offenders arrived at the victim's home around 10:30 p.m., carried out the attack quickly, transported her to Beverly Hills, carried out the fatal act around 11:30 p.m., set the vehicle on fire, and fled just before residents noticed the blaze. Crucially, cameras showed the white sedan on Canterbury Road at about 10:45 p.m., traveling in the same direction as a dark SUV several hundred meters behind, suggesting the two vehicles were moving together. Near Beverly Hills, a private camera captured them turning into Welfare Avenue within minutes of each other. About 15 minutes later, another camera recorded the white sedan driving back out alone. This led to a major hypothesis. The group transported the victim to this isolated location, carried out their attack, set the SUV on fire, then all left together in the sedan, abandoning the burned vehicle behind. The sedan later disappeared along the highway heading south, possibly continuing toward Melbourne that same night. Tracking this sedan proved difficult because it was using false license plates. Around this time, the victim's husband had already returned. During his interview with police, he appeared devastated. When brought in for identification, he tearfully recognized personal features of his wife and a charred piece of her gold necklace found near the remains. More importantly, when pressed with the question, "Who might want to harm your family?" he hesitated, then revealed a chilling secret. He had once been involved with a criminal drug manufacturing network. He admitted that he frequently traveled between Sydney and Melbourne for business with a group of Vietnamese offenders tied to a large synthetic drug operation. Recently, however, a serious conflict had erupted between him and the group after a large shipment mysteriously went missing. He suspected they believed he had taken it or that someone had diverted the shipment, costing them millions of dollars, leading to retaliation. Upon hearing this, investigators immediately developed a new working theory. The motive for this crime likely stemmed from an internal dispute within the drug trafficking world, and the innocent woman had become a tragic pawn in their conflict. On the 22nd of April 2025, the final forensic report confirmed the husband's account. DNA extracted from the victim's teeth matched the DNA profiles of her two children. With this, police formally concluded that the victim was Thi Tran, 45. Her identity was officially confirmed, closing the search for the name behind the tragedy, yet simultaneously opening a long and challenging road ahead to track down those responsible for this horrific act. Alongside the identification process, investigators urgently continued gathering physical evidence. At the victim's home, the forensics team searched for any traces the offenders might have left behind, such as fingerprints or shoe prints. Unfortunately, the attackers had worn gloves and covered their faces, operating with a level of professionalism that left almost no usable prints or identifying images. Even so, police did recover a piece of black tape near the entrance, possibly used to restrain the victim and later discarded. The tape was sent for laboratory testing to look for DNA or trace sweat belonging to the perpetrator. Meanwhile, at the burned SUV site, specialists attempted to collect whatever remained. The vehicle's metal license plates had been removed, suggesting a deliberate attempt to erase registration records. However, the VIN on the engine block was still visible. A rapid database check revealed the SUV had been registered in Victoria, but the listed owner was a shell company, indicating that the vehicle was likely used by the criminal group and then abandoned. In addition, bullet fragments found inside the SUV were sent for ballistic examination to determine the type of firearm used. Results showed they came from a .22 caliber handgun, a model commonly used among criminal groups. Another angle of the investigation focused on phone records. During questioning, Thi Tran provided investigators with a disturbing lead. Just before Thi Tran was killed, his phone received a series of threatening countdown messages, 20 minutes left, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, resembling a ticking clock. However, because he was away on a work trip at the time and his phone was either out of service or turned off, he did not see the messages until much later. His lack of response may have angered the kidnappers and pushed them toward a more violent outcome. At the same time, the ransom-like nature of those messages suggested that the criminals initially intended to negotiate. It is highly likely that they demanded a substantial payment. When their ultimatum went unanswered, they chose to carry out their threats in the harshest way. When all these clues were pieced together, investigators saw a clearer portrait of the offenders, an organized group with planning, coordination, and an interstate network. As a result, New South Wales Police worked with Victoria Police to expand the investigation, sharing intelligence on the synthetic drug network the husband had been involved with. As expected, Victoria Police confirmed they were also monitoring a Vietnamese criminal group suspected of running a large-scale methamphetamine operation. In fact, on the 19th of April 2025, just 2 days after the murder, Victoria Police raided a remote farm in Spring Dala, west of Ballarat, believed to be one of the group's drug manufacturing sites. There, officers seized chemicals and equipment consistent with synthetic drug production, reinforcing evidence of a wider criminal network. However, no suspects were arrested, as the group appeared to have fled before the raid. Even so, the discovery confirmed that the syndicate behind this operation had interstate reach and operated with high sophistication. At this point, investigators refocused on the victim's husband's connections within the drug network. Using his statements, they identified individuals he had recently worked with. One name quickly stood out: Thi Tran, a 29-year-old Vietnamese man living in Bankstown. Intelligence indicated he acted as a link between the Victoria-based drug group and several associates in Sydney, making him a critical bridge in the supply chain. He had previously appeared in federal drug-related intelligence files, though he had no formal criminal convictions. His residence being in Bankstown, only a short distance from the victim's home, further heightened suspicion. Police questioned whether he might have used his local familiarity to orchestrate the retaliation against his associate's family. Investigators began covert surveillance on Thi Tran. Administrative records showed he rented a modest apartment in Bankstown, lived alone, and had no clear occupation. In the weeks following the murder, Nguyen remained in Sydney rather than fleeing, lived quietly, and appeared to be lying low, as though detached from the chaos unfolding outside. Police secretly collected his phone data, call logs, messages, and location history from the night of April 17th. Analysis revealed that on the night of the crime, Nguyen's phone was active in the Bankstown area and powered off around 10 p.m., only switching on again hours later at another location. This raised alarm bells, as the timing aligned exactly with the abduction. Investigators suspected he turned off his phone to avoid location tracking during the crime. Financial tracing also showed that right after April 17th, Nguyen received a large deposit into his bank account, which he promptly withdrew in cash. This could have been payment or operational funding for the attack. With mounting evidence, New South Wales police decided to move in. At 5 a.m. on the 28th of August 2025, more than 4 months after the murder, the Raptor Squad and the Homicide Squad raided Nguyen's apartment in Bankstown. Nguyen was arrested on the spot while still asleep, leaving him no chance to resist. Police quickly seized his phone, computer, and several documents for examination. At the Bankstown police station, Thi An Nguyen was intensively interrogated. As expected from an experienced offender, he invoked his right to remain silent and denied all involvement. However, police had gathered sufficient evidence to press charges. On the afternoon of the 28th of August 2025, he was formally charged with murder and intentionally causing serious injury related to the attack on the 8-year-old boy. Police announced to the media that Nguyen was the one who orchestrated the abduction and the killing of Kim Thi Tran, even if he was not the person who pulled the trigger. Despite arresting a key suspect, the investigation was far from over. New South Wales police believed Nguyen did not act alone. They suspected he had hired 3 gunmen to help carry out the kidnapping and killing. Those 3 men, the ones who directly carried out the shooting, were still at large. Police vowed to track them down and were coordinating with federal agencies to uncover the criminal organization behind the attack. The case had now entered a new phase, expanding from a single homicide into a broader investigation targeting a mafia-style syndicate and a far-reaching criminal network operating across Australia. This raises an important question. Who exactly is Thi An Nguyen, and did he truly orchestrate the attack on Mrs. Kim and her 2 children as a form of punishment? According to investigators, Thi An Nguyen, 29, is an Australian citizen of Vietnamese descent. Born and raised in Sydney's Vietnamese community, he was no stranger to the criminal underworld and was believed to be a key link within a drug trafficking syndicate based in Victoria. Despite being only 29, Nguyen had already entered the interstate methamphetamine trade and risen as an ambitious young figure. Senior members of the network entrusted him with transporting product between Melbourne and Sydney, as well as handling internal disputes within the organization. In other words, Thi An Nguyen acted as Sydney-based coordinator while also serving as an enforcer when necessary to protect the syndicate's interests. Yet before his arrest, he had never been convicted of a major offense, allowing him to remain largely invisible to law enforcement despite his deep involvement. Nguyen's relationship with the victim emerged through her husband. Nguyen was described as a close business associate of Kim Thi Tran's spouse. That connection may explain why, when the criminal group's shipment went missing, Nguyen immediately suspected the victim's husband of betrayal or negligence. Acting either on orders or on his own decision, Nguyen allegedly sought to send a message by targeting the man's family, both as retaliation and as pressure to recover the missing product. His actions revealed a level of cold calculation that shocked the public. Nguyen did not carry out the attack himself. Instead, he stayed behind the scenes, directing others to execute the most brutal parts of the plan. This level of emotional detachment drew outrage, rivaling that directed at those who physically carried out the crime. Psychologically, Nguyen fit the profile of a high-functioning offender. He understood both street-level rules and legal risks, and deliberately tried to conceal his role. Rather than acting personally, he hired contract offenders and created an alibi. He even remained in Sydney afterward, likely believing the plan was flawless or wanting to show defiance toward law enforcement. In the end, however, even the sharpest cover can be torn apart, and he was brought into the light. After his arrest, Thi An Nguyen was brought before the Bankstown local court on the 29th of August 2025. He did not apply for bail, an understandable decision given the severity of the charges. The magistrate denied bail and ordered him into remand ahead of trial. Outside the courtroom, defense lawyer Julie Nguyen stated that this was only the beginning of the legal process, and that her client intended to plead not guilty to all charges. However, Subsequent developments drastically changed the direction of the investigation. By late October 2025, a major breakthrough occurred when UNSW police arrested 3 additional suspects described as a kill crew, aged 20, 21, and 32. They were accused of breaking into Mrs. Kim Thi Tran home, injuring the 8-year-old boy, abducting the victim, and transporting her in the SUV, later destroyed. All 3 were charged with murder, kidnapping, and participation in an organized criminal group. Their arrests expanded and restructured the entire case file, confirming that Thi Nguyen was not the sole perpetrator, but part of a much larger conspiracy. From this point, Nguyen's role became clearer. He was viewed as the coordinator who provided instructions and intelligence to the hit team rather than the direct assailant. This strengthened the conspiracy to murder charge, which, if proven deliberate, carries penalties similar to those for direct perpetrators. As of the 24th of November 2025, NSW police confirmed they were still pursuing the individual behind it all, the person believed to have ordered and financed the operation. That individual's identity has not been disclosed, but is suspected to be part of the Victoria-based criminal network. Investigators are also compiling additional evidence from cameras, digital devices, and encrypted communications. Meanwhile, Thi Nguyen remains in custody and is expected to appear in his next court hearing in early 2026. With the arrest of the 3 direct offenders, Nguyen's ability to shift blame onto unknown third parties has weakened significantly. Legal analysts believe that if the hit team confirms his role, Nguyen could face an exceptionally severe sentence, potentially comparable to life imprisonment. And if so, where is the true mastermind now? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. If you found today's story compelling, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to Vietnamese Case Files to follow more gripping cases in the future. Thank you, and see you next time.